Good morning. Oh, thank you, thank you. And I echo what Mr. Roberts said. We're so glad you're here today. I'm a retired teacher. My name is Nancy Hightower. I taught 8th grade earth science for many years, got me interested in the environment and the earth and caring for the earth. So when I retired and moved over here to Paulding County, you know that's the county that we're in, Paulding County, I started working with a group called Keep Paulding Beautiful, whose main goal is to keep Paulding County beautiful. So we do lots of things. We have litter pickup events. At Christmas, if you have a live Christmas tree, you know, at the end of Christmas, it's not very live anymore. So instead of you throwing it away, you can bring it to us. We'll chip it up. It becomes mulch that can be put around plants, and it helps keep Paulding beautiful. We have shredder events. Now, this may not be especially for you, but you could share with your parents. If they have important papers that they really don't want to throw away, they want them securely disposed of, twice a year we have a shredder event. They could bring that to us. So these are all things that we do to help keep Paulding beautiful. But another one of our goals is to educate the citizens of Paulding County about what they can do. And even at your young age, you're citizens of Paulding County, so that's why we're here to talk to you today. Now, we could talk all day long about things to do to keep Paulding beautiful, but because time is limited, I'm going to focus on water pollution. Now, water pollution does not bring happy thoughts to mind. It is not a good thing. And you know, I don't think anybody gets up in the morning and says, oh, I think I'll go out and pollute today. We don't really plan to do it, but pollution usually happens because of people's activities. So we'll learn a little more about pollution today, like where does it come from? What does it do? And what can be done about it? So you know, if water is polluted, that means it is unhealthy, unsafe, unclean. So once we understand it, we want to do something about that. Well, let's do a little background check here. Let's review the water cycle. You know, I think we've got rain in the forecast. If it rains, there are probably going to be some puddles in your yard or on the playground or wherever. Well, in a day or two, those puddles are going to be gone because the heat from the sun is going to cause evaporation to take place. Now, evaporation is a scientific process that changes liquid water that we can see into invisible water vapor. There's water vapor in this room. There's water vapor all around the outside. Now, outside, it starts to rise in the atmosphere. Now, it doesn't rise to the sun, but it rises in the atmosphere until it reaches a point where it cools off. And when it cools off, condensation takes place. That changes the invisible water droplets, or the water vapor, into water droplets that we can see, because then they form clouds. And we can see clouds. Now, in those clouds, the water droplets bump together. It's sort of like, have you been in your car at the end of a rain time and there are droplets on the windshield, and one droplet may go down and bump into another droplet, and it gets bigger, and then it bumps into another, and then they keep growing every time they bump together. That's what happens in the clouds. Do you see how the bottom of the cloud is looking gray? That's because the droplets are bigger and bigger, and eventually the cloud can't hold that moisture anymore, and it'll come back to earth. Now, the most common way for that is rain. But there are three, and that's called precipitation. There are three other forms of precipitation. In the winter, instead of rain, we might have snow. Sometimes we have little round icy pellets that we call hail. And the fourth one is sleet, which is sort of like icy rain. We don't have sleet quite as often as the others. But anyway, all of those would fall back to the earth, and even the frozen ones would eventually melt, And they would flow down and get into a stream and flow back down to a lake or a river or a pond. And then the heat of the sun would cause evaporation, and then we'd have condensation, and it goes on and on. And that's why we call it a cycle, because it's continuously going on, has been going on for billions of years. Do you know the water you go swimming in this summer could be some droplets that billions of years ago maybe were in a puddle a dinosaur sloshed through? Or maybe droplets that were in the ocean that Christopher Columbus sailed over? Because did I say anything about making new water in the water cycle? No, we are not making new water. What we've got is what we've got. And that's the main reason we need to be careful with our activities so we don't pollute the water. Now let me add one more bit of information. When this water gets into that stream, to get to the stream, it has to flow from where it landed to that stream. Now, when it first starts to rain, the rain soaks into the earth. The earth can absorb it. But suppose it rains really, really hard, or maybe it rains for 3 or 4 days in a row. The earth can't keep absorbing that rain, and it'll start running off across the land. You see it maybe most easily when it flows down on the edge of a street. Have you seen water going down there? It's running off across the land, and we call it runoff because it's running off across the land. Now, sometimes you may have seen it in your yards, little trickles. Do you know runoff can carry stuff? Could it carry a leaf? Sure it could. And take it to that stream? Could it carry some dirt? Sure it could. So runoff is a main contributor to our pollution. So I told you we would talk about where pollution comes from. Here is one source. In our lives, we have waste from leaves, grass clippings, animal droppings. We don't need to talk about that, do we? Okay, we got animal droppings, and garbage. Those are all part of life. They are not going away. We just need to handle them properly so they don't get in our waters. So here are a couple of pictures. There's somebody's patio. The leaves have fallen off the patio. That happens every year. And over here, they cut the grass. I think they waited too long to cut the grass. Look how much grass clippings there are there. But anyway, do you think runoff could pick up some of those leaves and carry them? Maybe not the whole pile, but a few leaves at a time. Sure it could. Okay, so what does it do? When the runoff carries that, it pollutes the runoff. It makes it unclean, unhealthy, unsafe. And if it gets in that pond or that lake or that river, as it decays, it affects the oxygen level, which affects the fish. I mean, fish have to get their oxygen from the water, so we don't want to lower that level. Now here is a picture showing some runoff. You can see it's going down the stream. There's some leaves there. It's even carried that cup. And that's going into a storm drain. Now, we call rainwater storm water. Doesn't have to be a big storm. It's just called storm water. And that is a storm drain. Now, in my neighborhood, we don't have that metal part. We've just got this concrete thing on the side of the road. You've seen it, your balls roll down there, okay? So in Paulding County, all of our storm drains go to a creek. We have no storm sewers. You know, a sewer is like a pipe that carries water to a place to be treated. And we have some sanitary sewers, but not storm sewers, not for rainwater. So in my neighborhood, up the street from my house, there's a storm drain, and it leads to a creek behind my house. You would not believe the stuff I found in that creek. I find balls, I find newspapers, I find bottles. Now, I don't find grass clippings because they're so small, they wash on down farther. But anything that's on the street, the runoff is going to carry it to the storm drain. So we really need to be careful with these things so they don't get caught up by the runoff. What can we do? Discussing the animal droppings, some people, like in my neighborhood, walk their dogs, and I have a couple of neighbors that carry a plastic bag with them, and they clean up after their dog. That's the kind of neighbor you want to have to keep those animal droppings from being picked up by the runoff. And this guy is going to rake up and properly dispose of his leaves. He's not going to blow them into the creek. He's not going to blow his grass clippings into the street. Do you see that? People blow their grass clippings into the street, and now you know where those grass clippings are going to end up. The next time the rain comes, they'll be washed into the nearest stream. So that's one source of water pollution. Now, in our lives, there are some toxic substances. What's another word for toxic? Poisonous. Now, the three examples there, they're really pretty important. My car has to have oil. I think most motors do. Oil is not going away. We just need to care for it properly. Household cleaners. Oh, we want to keep our houses clean, and especially this past year, we have cleaned a lot. We just want to be sure we dispose of those when we're through with the bottles and the containers, just handle it properly. And finally, pesticides. Now, that may be a new word for you. Let's see. I like to grow tomato plants on my deck in the summer. Every year, these bugs come and eat my blooms. And if they eat my blooms, I get no tomatoes. So I go to the store and I buy pesticide to put on my plant. It doesn't hurt the plant, but it takes care of those bugs. Pesticides are very important for us to have the food supply we need. We just need to be sure we handle them properly, and when we're through, we dispose of the containers properly. Now, I'm going to show you, well, look at that picture on the left. They obviously are taking no care with those containers. They don't even know half of what's in there. They're probably not sealed, and if they're leaking, could runoff carry that to the nearest stream? It certainly could. Over on the right, there's a parking lot. We see parking lots all the time. Do you see the black spots in that parking lot? Do you know what that is? It is oil. Remember I told you my car needs oil? Does it help my car if the oil is on the parking lot? Not a bit. It means that there's a car or several cars that leak. They're leaking oil. Now, some of you may even have oil stains in your garage or in your driveway. And that probably means that somebody you know who comes to your house has a car that's leaking oil. Well, when it rains, some of that oil can be carried by the runoff. What can it do? If there's enough of these harmful substances, the oil, the household cleaners, and the pesticides, in a body of water, and you were to go in there, maybe if you had a scratch on your foot, you might have an allergic reaction to it. And it can affect the fish. Now, this is the second time we've mentioned fish being harmed by pollution. Now, you know, if the water's not good for the fish, it's probably not good for us either. So, what can we do about these? One thing would be to store all of these toxic, poisonous substances safely. There's a nice, neat cabinet, they are sealed up, and if the bottle or container gets empty, then you need to be sure and dispose of it properly. Don't put it in a dump like we just saw. And over here, if you have an oil stain in your car, an oil stain in your driveway, your car may be sick. Needs to go to the doctor so it'll feel better and not leak oil anymore. So those are two things you can do to help reduce the amount of pollution. Moving on, one other example is excessive fertilizer. And excessive means too much. You know, I want my plants to look good. I want my grass to be nice and green, so I might want to use some fertilizer. But here's something I learned. Plants use the amount of fertilizer they need. You know, sometimes we eat more food than we need. Plants don't do that with fertilizer. They use the amount they need and the rest just sits there. And when it rains, the runoff carries that fertilizer with it, can carry it to the nearest stream. Now, here we have two examples of fertilizing. Now, the guy on the left, I'm sure he's very good at what he does, but I don't know if that's a very accurate way of putting the right amount of fertilizer. I mean, he's throwing it out by hand. Now, on the right, this is a big farm. I bet they know how to set their equipment so they put out the right amount. But look how big that field is. You can't even see where the field ends. That is a huge field. There's going to be a lot of fertilizer going on that field. I'm a little worried that some of it's going to wash away. So, what does it do? Well, it makes the algae, the algae and any weeds that are in lakes grow. Did you know that little weeds and plants grow on the bottom of lakes? And I think don't ducks duck down and eat those, and maybe fish too? So it makes them grow. That sounds like a good idea, unless you have fertilizer and more fertilizer and it's too much. It can make them grow so much that it chokes the waterway. There's so many plants in there that boats would have trouble traveling, fish might have trouble swimming, ducks might have trouble. So it can make the plants grow so much that it chokes the waterway and robs the fish of oxygen. So I've got a picture here of a cute little pond. Look at those pretty pink flowers. At first glance, you think that's a lovely little pond. It is not a healthy pond. It is overgrown with plants. Suppose you were a fish in that pond that eats bugs that land on the surface of the water. I'm not even sure a bug could land. And if it did, I'm not sure a fish could see it. And if a duck came to land, the duck could almost walk across the surface. There are so many plants. That is not a healthy pond. So what do we need to do? We need to know the right amount of fertilizer to use. And I didn't go to any school that teaches that. You need to read the directions. That's how you know the right amount to use. Okay, in addition, we have sediment from erosion. Now, sediment is sort of a fancy word for dirt in water. Have you noticed some of the ponds around Paulding County, after we've had a heavy rain, they look sort of reddish? That's because we've got red clay dirt in Paulding County. And now you know runoff has carried that dirt into that pond. Now eventually it'll start looking like water and not mud again, because sediment settles out. It settles to the bottom of the pond or lake. When I was little, and I'm not sure why I like to do this, but I like to put some of the dirt from my backyard in a container full of water and shake it up, and then watch how it settles out. Now, the heavier particles are going to settle first, and then the lighter particles will settle out. You'll have a layer of those, and then it might be that the water just looks sort of cloudy. And I probably would get tired of waiting for that. But if I left it a day or two, eventually all of those particles would settle out and the water would be clear again. So that happens, but until the sediment settles out, it can cause problems. Let's look at some of this sediment. Now, on the left, that little edge of a pond looks like the color of the hill. That's because half of the hill is in the pond. Now, eventually, that water will clear up, but until then, it's causing problems. On the right, you can see it's eroding. That's when water is carrying the dirt away. And if it goes far enough, it'll end up in a stream and pollute it. So what to do about that? I'm sorry, what does it do? Well, it builds up in water bodies. As it settles out, there's a layer of dirt. Next time it rains, more settles out, there's another layer of dirt. So it keeps building up. So it can make the water body not be as deep as it was. It destroys the feeding grounds. Do you remember those weeds and plants we said grow on the bottom of a lake? What is their dirt doing? It's covering it up every time the dirt settles out. And so that can destroy those plants. It can clog fish gills. Have you studied about the way fish breathe? They take it in through the gills take the oxygen out. Well, if you've got dirt in the water, it's not only taking in water and oxygen, it's taking in water, oxygen, and the dirt. So that doesn't sound very healthy for the fish. And finally, it affects the way the sunlight acts with the water. It causes the sunlight it absorbs it more rapidly, increases the temperatures. And I don't think Georgia fish want the temperatures to be like Miami fish have, They want Georgia temperatures. So we don't want to have all this sediment. Now, here are two things that can happen to stop sediment. On the left, how many of you have seen silt fences? Okay, anytime they work on a road, when they're building a house, they put these up. And I'm going to ask you later on, so I want you to tune in to silt fence and erosion blanket, because I'm going to ask you about those later. It is against the law for the people working on the roads, building the houses, to let this dirt get on the roads and wash into our streams. They can be fined money, penalized with a fine for that. So they're really very good about putting this up. I got excited this morning. I saw a truck. It was called CSI Erosion, and the back of it was loaded with all of those sticks that they use and silt fence, and I thought, yes, somebody's going out to help protect our streams, keep that dirt out of the nearest stream. Now, certain places, the silt fence doesn't work as well. They were not as worried about over here the dirt washing onto the road as getting into the side gully and washing it down to the stream. So they laid out a big piece of mesh called an erosion blanket that has seeds in it. And can you see how it's looking greener down the way? The grass seed has started to grow, and the roots of that grass seed will help hold the dirt in place. In addition to the blanket, they call it a blanket. Now that will eventually decay and go away, but the grass will stay there to help hold the dirt in place. So those are two excellent ways for keeping sediment out of our waters. And finally, in our lives, we have trash. And when it gets on the side of the road, we call it litter. I was looking today on the roads coming here, and I saw some litter. I don't think Paulding County people are really great about taking care of litter. Do you ever see it when you're out riding around? Okay. I'm going to show you two pictures really quick. I hate to look at them because they are really bad. Look how the beach is being harmed by litter. Now, that didn't have to happen. And on the, I'm sorry, I just can't even look at that. So for one thing, one of the problems is it looks bad. It looks terrible. And it can hurt aquatic life. We could spend the rest of the morning talking about dangers for fish and turtles and even things that just get near litter. They don't even have to be in the water, or they can be choked by it, or they can eat it. They think it's food, and it can, anyway, a lot of our aquatic life can be hurt by the litter that we let get in the waters. As it decays, it can pollute the water. What do we need to do? We need to throw our trash away. Put it in the proper container, because the only cure for litter is you and me. It's all of us. We need to take care of litter properly, because it takes all of us to keep Paulding beautiful. So, as Mr. Robert told you, we had this information for you, and now we're going over to the Enviroscape. All right, so this is called the Enviroscape, and as you asked, it really could be a model of Paulding County, because everything that's going on here could be going on in our county right now. Let me mention to you that, well, think about this. If we had a rain cloud right over this little hill, don't say anything and don't point, but in your mind, can you tell me where the runoff would end up? Just look at the model here. Look at the Enviroscape. I hope you said, well, it'll run down the edge of the hill, it'll go in this stream, and it'll end up in this lake. Is that where your water ended up? Okay, let's make it look a little more like a lake. We'll get us some good, clean water in there. Now that is nice, clean, unpolluted water. The fish are happy. Anybody who goes to swim there would be happy, because it's nice and clean, because no human activities have taken place yet. Let me also give you a new word for you. This is called a watershed. It is an area where all of the water that falls on here, and if you think about it, if it rains on this bridge, would the water eventually end up in the lake? Mm-hmm. If it rains on that edge of the street, would it end up in the lake? Mm-hmm. So an area where all the water ends up in one common place is called a watershed. And we have many watersheds in Paulding County that need protecting. We need to keep the runoff from carrying our stuff into the streams. But activities are going on, so let's talk about those. Over here we have Bulldozer Guy. He's clearing the land, they're gonna build a house, and his job is to get rid of all the trees and all the grasses. As he does that, he leaves exposed soil. So you can see here that this is representing soil. Now, I don't know if you recognize this container, it's cocoa. Now, cocoa smells great. I love to open this can and smell the cocoa, but it's unsweetened cocoa. So you want to be sure that you don't get any of this on your hands and in your mouth, because it is bitter. You would make a face if this got in your mouth, but it looks a lot like our Georgia red clay. So over here we have exposed soil. Now, if it rains, what would the runoff do to that soil? It would pick it up, wouldn't it, and carry it, and you know where it's going to end up, in our nice clean lake. Do you remember from the presentation what he should do to keep that?
He should have like those little fences.
Now the little fences, perfect, the silt fence, that's what he should do. Now over here we have a little hill, it used to have a forest on it. It has a very small forest now. I guess they cut down all the other trees to make wood for the house he's going to build. But if you look, you can see where erosion has been taking place. Rain has washed the soil away, and eventually the hill will go away. So right now, we've got exposed soil all over here. Do you know what they should have done when they cut down those trees? They could have put that fence, but it's a little harder. You see how it's kind of zigzaggy. Do you remember that other thing I told you to remember?
The erosion blanket.
Erosion blanket. If they had laid that over the sides, in fact, it works really well on hills. When they were building Bill Caruth Parkway, I don't know if you know where that is, but it's a big road and they had a lot of hills, you could see the erosion blankets. They're used a lot. But anyway, that's what they should have done. Now over here, we have Farmer Brown's field. He's been out plowing his field because he's going to grow corn. Now, I'm already worried. Do you see the grooves in his field? They are like a highway straight to the lake.
And
When it rains,
it would wash into the lake.
it's make our fish unhappy, wouldn't it? So I believe he needs to maybe he needs to build a little wall here. He needs to do something to keep that dirt from ending up in the lake. And over here, for some reason, the weeds died on the side of the road, but we've got a little soil there. Now, we do have some grassy areas. We've got a neighborhood, and we've got part of a golf course. You see the little flag there? Now, I don't know if you know much about golf courses. This is a hole. This is one hole of a golf course. Most golf courses have 18 holes. Well, if we had 18 holes, the grass y'all would be standing on the golf course, wouldn't you? It would be a lot of grass. Now, they want their grass to be beautiful, so the golfers will come, and so they're probably going to use fertilizer. How are they going to know the right amount of fertilizer to use?
Read the instructions.
Read the instructions, yes indeed. So now this is my unsweetened Kool-Aid fertilizer. So again, it smells pretty good because it's lime, but you don't want it in your mouth. All right, so they are putting out fertilizer. Now, they are fertilizing over here, but this guy, he thinks if a little is good, a lot must be better. He doesn't read the directions, and he puts out, oh, that's a lot of fertilizer.
Put it on the tree.
Well, that's, okay. Farmer Brown went to town, but it's time to fertilize the corn. Now, he's got a helper named Hank who's going to do the fertilizing for him. Do we think Hank reads the directions? No. He does not. He just fertilizes up a storm. Woo. Oh, and now, we got that path going straight to the lake. All right, so Farmer Brown goes out a few weeks later. His corn is growing. He's so excited till he gets up close, and he sees bugs eating his corn plants. He says, oh dear, I need some pesticide. So he goes to the store, and he gets some pesticide. And this is my unsweetened Kool-Aid pesticide. But Farmer Brown wants to take a nap. He says, Hank can put out my pesticide. Oh dear. Oh dear.
You should fire him.
Well, I don't know. He gets the pesticide out. That's a lot of pesticide. Now, I think you can get pests in your grass. The golf course people, they don't want anybody messing with their grass. They want it to stay beautiful. Now, they've got acres and acres of grass. Remember, y'all are standing on the golf course over here. So I bet they're still going to read the directions because, for one thing, they want to do it right. They don't want to hurt their grass, and that would be very expensive if they put more than they needed to. So I believe they're going to read the directions. So they read the directions, they're going to put some pesticide, and then there's this guy. He doesn't read the directions.
That's Hank's house.
Some people do think it's Hank's house. Yes, okay. All right, now we put out that fertilizer, the grass starts to grow. So we have to cut the grass. And here are my parsley flake grass clippings, okay? So they cut the grass. We've got grass clippings on the golf course. We've got grass clippings over here. Now, this guy, when he finishes cutting his grass, he has grass in his driveway. And he gets out his handy-dandy blower, and he blows it where? Into the street. Now, this represents a storm drain. Actually, this came with a little tube that's supposed to go from here over. There's a hole on this side, which would drain the water into the creek. We're going to have to kind of pretend that. But when it rains, can the runoff carry that grass into the storm drain?
Yep,
and
it would
it's
carry the gas, and they would bring it into our dirty water.
well, yeah, it's going to make it dirty, right? Make it not very good.
It already is because the fertilizer.
Oh,
is still there.
yeah, a little bit of fertilizer has made it there. Now we have a couple of cars. We got a parking lot up here. Maybe that's the Walmart parking lot.
Yep.
I hate to walk through the Walmart parking lot.
Me too.
I have to be careful. I don't want to step in those black stains. So here is my soy sauce oil. And here in every single, oops, that's a big stain, every single parking spot has an oil stain. Now, I don't know, since you're not drivers yet, if you've noticed this, but in the middle of the lanes on busy roads, maybe not in your neighborhood, but on busy roads, there's a sort of a dark streak down the center of the lane. Do you know what that is? It is oil from millions of trips of cars. So here we have, right here, down the middle of this lane, and it would be over there if I could reach it. So we have oil. Now, when it rains, the runoff is going to carry that into the storm drain and into our nice, clean lake. Now, finally, I have some litter. Now, I'm using sprinkles for litter because I want you to watch what happens. These people just left McDonald's. I guess I'm standing on McDonald's over here. And the little girl in the back seat, let's see, we had Hank, let's have Henrietta in the back seat. She threw out some of her Happy Meal trash. So, watch what this litter does. Even before it rains, the wind blows some of it already into the creeks, into our lake. Yes. So it is already polluting our nice, clean lake.
A lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
But things aren't too bad because we haven't had any rain. Well, that's about to change.
What?
So, each of you is going to get a chance to reign, and what I'd like for you to do is pick one of the polluted areas. In other words, pick the dirt up here to spray 10 times. Don't go spray, 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 spray. Pick one thing and spray it 10 times. It kind of makes sense to me for you all to spray this side and for you all to focus on this side. Later on, we can have you move around, but to start with, pick one of the areas. Now remember, you are a rain cloud, so you don't spray down here. Rain clouds are not 2 feet off the ground. You need to be cloud level. So if you start getting too low, because this is a little heavy, if you start getting too low, I will say, be a cloud. Okay, and that means raise it up a little bit. All right, do you have any questions? Now, we want you to be sure and spray to the center. We don't want to pollute the carpet, okay? So, take a step back. Take a step back. Let's start with you, okay? Now, do you know how to use the spray bottles? I've got it set, so you, oh, this one, pardon me?
He sprays us with vinegar.
Oh, well, I'm glad we've got water. And okay, there we go. Okay, and help him count 10 times at one spot. And you start right here. Let's be sure that's a good spray. Okie doke. Good, go ahead, spray. Pull hard.
1,
Good.
2, 3,
Perfect.
4, 5,
Good,
6,
okay.
7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, and pass it to the next person. Now, when you're spraying, you can move up, okay? But you probably ought to stay back because he might blow cocoa all over you, okay?
1, 2,
Go ahead, pick something and spray 10 times.
5, 6,
Going after the oil and the litter.
9, 10.
Let's see.
1,
Okay,
2,
be a cloud, be a cloud. Get up a little higher. There you go.
5,
Okay.
7,
Ooh, I see some runoff. There it's going. All right, hold it there.
it smells
Now,
cocoa.
we have just had a baby rain so far, so I think you're going to need to rain some more. So go 10 more times. You can go a different place, you can go the same place, okay? If you're going to spray here, come back this way and spray towards it. Good. Oh, I see. Oh, look at my creek. Oh my goodness, there's dirt and it's, be a cloud. Be up here and spray down. There you go. Okay, and pass it on after you've got to 10. Okay.
Oh, it smells so bad.
Okay, good. Oh, the fish are getting unhappy.
It smells so
Okay. All right, can you spray the dirt here? There you go. Okay. Let's see. I would like, perfect. Would you take care of the oil in the parking lot? Okay. Do we have more here? Would you like to spray? Okay. Okay. Can you get it up a little higher? A little higher. Can you reach it? Good. Okay. Keep spraying at the parking lot. Okay, that's got it. All right, now do you see the oil has now come into this ditch? The oil is in our creek.
Oh no.
My goodness. All right, now
Messy town.
I am thinking our fish are not very happy. And I'm not sure I would want to go swimming unless I maybe went over there. And if we had boats that were in there, they would stir up the water and they'd mix the pollution everywhere. And if we had, like we still have stuff, if we had more rain, we would have just really polluted that lake. Now, did that have to happen?
No.
We had a solution for everything. And in Paulding County, I think there's a solution for everything. So here's what, as youngsters, young citizens in Paulding County, I think you can take from this. First of all, if you have oil stains in your driveway or your garage, you might need to say very politely to your parents, I think we need to get the car fixed because the car is leaking oil. It's not just leaking here, it's leaking in the parking lot, it's leaking on the road, and it's washing into the streams. Secondly, if you ever hear your parents talk about fertilizing or pesticides, and here's what I think. Would it not be wonderful if when you grow up and you have your own yard to take care of, you say, I remember this lady said I need to read the directions. So until then, be sure your parents read the directions for pesticides and fertilizers. And finally, and here's the biggie, each of you could say, I'm not ever going to litter. Now, probably some of you already don't. You're probably already very careful about keeping all the trash where it belongs. Now, I think it's an easy thing to do if you get in the habit and think about it. I do not know what these people, and sometimes I'm behind somebody who lets something go out the window. What are they thinking? Who do they think will pick that up? Where do they think it will go? I just don't understand it. But you could make a difference. And suppose you got everybody in your family to say, we are not ever, now I don't mean just this school year. I don't even mean while you're a child. Yeah, I mean forever. That you could do this, you could make a huge difference. If you said, I am never, ever going to litter, you could be very important in helping to keep Paulding beautiful. That would be great. So you all have been wonderful. You were good polluters. That doesn't sound right, does it? But you helped us illustrate our problem here. So thank you very much for coming. And remember, never, ever litter. There you go.